It's Wulf, and normally when new consoles come out, new games in any given series will come out on those new consoles. However, sometimes games in pre-existing series will actually release on previous generation consoles rather than new hardware. In this video, I'm going to be showing two examples of this, and also one honorable mention because it's a PC game, and PC games don't exactly have, console generations. But anyway, I recorded some clips a little while ago, so this video might be a little messy because I don't actually remember what I said in those clips, but I recorded some gameplay of these games and talked about it during the gameplay. The games are Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts, MotorStorm Arctic Edge, and the honorable mention is Postal 2 Paradise Lost. Also, I just want to be really specific that these are games that were not released cross-generationally. This is something that still happens pretty often now, where you'll have a PlayStation 5 game that also comes out on PlayStation 4, but these games were specifically released for older consoles and not newer ones. So with Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts, Call of Duty 3 was released on 6th and 7th generation consoles, but Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was only released on 7th generation consoles, and Call of Duty World at War was only released on 7th generation consoles. Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts was only released on 6th generation consoles. Same with MotorStorm Arctic Edge. MotorStorm and MotorStorm Pacific Rift were both released on PlayStation 3, and MotorStorm Arctic Edge was exclusive to PlayStation 2 despite the fact that it came out after those other two games, and it also came out on PSP. In Postal 2 Paradise Lost, even though it's a PC game, is also kind of interesting and sort of fits into this because Postal 2 released and then eventually Postal 3 released, but Postal 3 was not very good. So rather than going off of what happened in Postal 3 to continue that franchise, Running with Scissors, the developers, actually went back to Postal 2 to make Paradise Lost the DLC for it. So the DLC released way after the original game released and after a sequel to that game released. So anyway though, as I mentioned, I recorded some gameplay and talked over the gameplay and talked more about this stuff as I played these games. So here is that gameplay that I recorded. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you find it interesting. Let me know in the comments if you can think of any other games that did this where they were in an ongoing series but then released on an older console, exclusively on an older console for some reason. So here we are on PlayStation 2 in Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts. By the way, I'm actually going to be recording the gameplay of World at War Final Fronts and MotorStorm Arctic Edge first in this video before I record anything else. So apologies if I repeat anything that you've already seen in this video because I'm recording it a little bit out of order. So I'm not going to put a memory card into my PlayStation because I don't feel like finding one. I'm only going to play each of these for a couple minutes and just kind of talk about them. I was debating on how I wanted to do this video, if I wanted to do live commentary or if I wanted to record gameplay and then commentate over it, but I think that the live commentary videos actually, people seem to enjoy them a little bit more. So here we are. So this is World at War Final Fronts on PS2. So this is the spin-off of World at War that came out exclusive to PlayStation 2 back in, I don't remember what year it was. This is probably something I'll already say earlier in the video. Like I said, no memory card because I don't feel like digging one out. So we'll be Profile A. And once again, no, I do not have a memory card in the PlayStation 2. Come on, yeah, I know. So this is a spin-off of World at War that was released, I believe, on the same day as World at War. It is PlayStation 2 exclusive, so not only did it not come out on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PC, or anything like that, but it also didn't come out on Xbox One, or not Xbox One, the original Xbox, sorry, didn't come out on any other consoles. It is exclusive to PlayStation 2, and the menu, you will be able to tell, looks kind of similar to the normal World at War menu, but not exactly. You'll also notice that there is only campaign. There is no multiplayer. There is no zombies mode. I don't remember exactly how the campaign of this relates to the campaign of normal World at War. I can't remember if they do relate. So if I remember right, it starts us out in a training mission. I'm actually going to skip through some of the cutscenes because I mostly want to show gameplay in this video. So the thing with World at War Final Fronts that I think is interesting to take note of is that, so Call of Duty, I don't remember exactly which ones, but 1, 2, and 3 pretty much had come out on some combo of PlayStation 2 or original Xbox or PC, that stuff, and none of them had come out on PlayStation 3 or anything like that. So Call of Duty 4 came out, and it was exclusive to PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PC, and then eventually got remastered, of course. But at the time, that game did not come out on PlayStation 2. Then World at War came out. That was also exclusive to PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PC. But then they made this spin-off for PlayStation 2. So you had a game in the series that was not at all released on PlayStation 2, and then with the next one in the series, they returned to PlayStation 2. And this is one of these situations where, oh wow, this controller is... Why am I moving? Uh-oh. Hang on, I might have to change controllers. There we go. Although I'm still moving. Okay, I don't know what's causing that, but this controller seems to be doing better about it, so... By the way, if the video looks a little weird in this video, I'm using my retro tank to record this, and it can be kind of hard sometimes to get like aspect ratio stuff correct with retro consoles, because like a lot of them do output 16:9, but they don't output it like normally always, so it can be kind of a pain. And of course I want to record in 16:9 because that's widescreen, it'll look better, but sometimes 16:9 doesn't look as good as 4:3, and it can be confusing, but let me try to get this fixed with the controller first. So something you'll probably notice is that this game looks really similar to Call of Duty 3. I don't know for sure, but I think that they were using the same engine as they used for Call of Duty 3 on this game, which makes sense because, like, you know, it was already there and everything. This was, by the way, the last Call of Duty game released on PlayStation 2. Now my aiming sensitivity is really low, though. But, yeah, this game looks and plays a lot like Call of Duty 3. I think even like the grenade icon that shows up is the same as Call of Duty 3's. Nope, missed it. Also, when you run, you don't like put the gun down by your side to run. At least I don't think so. Hang on. I need to mess with these controls again because now I'm aiming way too slow. Okay, actually, I think we're good now. I'll be there every step of the way. Get a move on, Miller. Under the net, through the obstacles. Go, go. I also want to mention that the game looks... It's one of these situations where the game actually seems to look better. Although, actually, okay, that's worth mentioning right there, the mantling thing. Mantling was not in the older Call of Duty games, so far as I remember. That was added in Call of Duty 4. A little bit, you couldn't mantle a ton. Of course, it was something that kind of got added into more as Call of Duty as a franchise went on. More mantling stuff got added with movement and stuff. But Call of Duty 4 was the first game where you would get like mantling, things like that, to jump over stuff. And so that has been sort of like backported onto the PlayStation 2 now with this game. But I wanted to mention the graphics of this game do not look very good, which is probably not that surprising since it is a PlayStation 2 game. But funny enough, I'm looking at what I'm seeing when I'm recording as compared to what I'm seeing on my actual TV screen right now. And this is one of these scenarios where something that the Elgato is doing seems to be making it look better in the recording than it does on my actual TV screen. But that being said, it is a PlayStation 2 game and does seem to be using a old engine, so it's not that weird that this wouldn't look, you know, especially good. But yeah, I'm gonna play it for a little bit. Now we're in an actual mission and try to help this flamethrower guy get up the hill, and then I'll swap over to Arctic Edge in a little bit. It actually took me quite a long time to buy this game, because I had played World at War before. Like, I owned World at War for a while. I never owned this game because, like, I had a PS3, and so I just never... Oh, no. That grenade is not... I just never had a reason to buy this one. That's something worth saying, though, about some of these, like, weird backwards generation games, is that a lot of them didn't really get ported to newer consoles at all, which I find
A little bit odd, because I know that even though like the point of them was like these games were made mostly for PS2 to capitalize on the fact that the PlayStation 2 had a massive install base. Like tons of people owned PlayStation 2s, and that's why these games were made. Not necessarily because like, you know, okay, now I can't. Now I can't. Why can't I prone now? Now I can't. Now I can't crouch. Now my circle button isn't working. Oh my god. Hang on. Yeah, I need to buy another controller for PlayStation 2, one that actually properly works. I'll have to get one of those like newer ones. Okay, there we go. There we go. Now my circle button's working again. You know, these games were made like mostly just to like capitalize on the fact that so many people owned the PlayStation 2. It's similar to how some games got Wii versions even though they were obviously made for like more powerful hardware than the Wii, because just so many people owned PlayStation 2 and Wii that if they didn't make something for these consoles, they were going to miss out. And even if the games they made were like totally unrelated to the main game or were like really watered down versions of the main game that they were making at the time, like they were still going to sell because so many people own these consoles, and a lot of people own these consoles and didn't necessarily own other consoles. And so that's, yeah, it's almost like the thing with how in places like Brazil where video game consoles are like especially expensive, how like PlayStation 2 still gets modded games released for it down there, or like the SNES gets like still modded new game releases and stuff. It's like that kind of concept, but just, you know, the actual developers doing it themselves. Oh, there's a Type 100. I'll keep my M1 for now, though. Uh-oh. Call of Duty World at War also had a four-person multiplayer mode, which is not present in this game because this game doesn't have online multiplayer. But that's just kind of an interesting thing to note, that that was something that not that many Call of Duty games at the time had, actually. Call of Duty World at War might have been the first one to have a campaign mode like that was multiplayer. And then that kind of disappeared for a long time until I think Black Ops 3? But it is cool that this exists. And I do kind of wish that it had gotten ported to like PC or something at the least, so that way it wasn't so kind of hard to play, because I mean, in order to play this you have to find, you know, PlayStation 2 and a disc of it, and it's not like this is not a very expensive game or anything like that, and the PlayStation 2 is still not a very expensive retro console, but if you want to play this is like the only option to play it, is to do it this way. And it is a completely different story. It's not like it's just a watered down version of World at War. This is totally different. Like, if oh god. Throw back the grenade! I pressed the square button. If you've played World at War, you will know that this is totally different than World at War's opening mission. Throw it. There we go. Maybe I wasn't close enough last time. I wonder what it must have been like to be somebody who was working on this game back like when it was being developed, because you would have seen like Call of Duty World at War being made for PS3 and the newer consoles and everything that like those could do, and then been working on this version of the game that is just entirely different, especially with like old hardware and stuff. That's one of the things that it's like fascinating to think about in general with some of these weird like old port game kind of things, where like the developers who were making these games were probably working on relatively outdated software at the time to make these games. I just wonder what that process would have been like. I guess now the mission is starting to look a little bit more like the opening level of Call of Duty World at War, the normal Call of Duty World at War, because the first mission of Call of Duty World at War normally does open with you fighting the Japanese army on a beach. But of course, this is like a totally different take on that. because you get rescued in the first mission of World at War. You're about to get like executed, and then you get rescued, and then you fight through the beach. If I remember right, I think that's how it starts though. But this is different. Games like this really do make you appreciate how far graphics have come in gaming, because like, you know, this was, well, okay, this was closer to 20 years ago than it was to 10 years ago. But you know, it's quite a few leaps and bounds that have happened since this game was released. I mean, but even if you consider like looking at this compared to Call of Duty World at War, games that came out I think on the same day, and you know, in the same franchise, technically in the same like vein of game. And just to think about how much better World at War looks than this game looks. I mean, this game isn't even running that well, really. I mean, that's not too surprising for PS2, I guess, but it's probably getting, I don't know, maybe like 20 FPS. I think, you know, 30 is kind of the minimum you usually want to aim for, but we're getting about 20. I've done playthroughs of a lot of Call of Duty games on the channel, and this is one of the ones that eventually I need to go back and do a playthrough of too still. I just never have yet, because for a long time, like I mentioned earlier, I actually didn't own this, but now I do. I've owned it for quite a while. I've just never actually really sat down and played it, because I don't really play PS2 that much anymore. But someday I'll have to try to sit down and do a playthrough of this, because I think it would be interesting, and I think there's a lot of people who probably did play through this game, but I think that there's also a lot of people who probably just played through World at War and never played this one, or maybe didn't even know that this one existed. And it is a totally different game. It's not at all the same story as World at War or anything. Doesn't have zombies mode, doesn't have multiplayer. It's really like an entirely different experience. It's almost more a sequel to Call of Duty 3 than it is like a modified version of World at War, really. I think that might be the end of the mission there. Yep. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and end this part of the video here. And then I think, like I said, this is the first part of the video I'm recording, but I guess I'm going to jump to MotorStorm Arctic Edge next. So now we're on the second game that I am going to show in this video, which is MotorStorm Arctic Edge. This is the third game in the MotorStorm series, so between Pacific Rift and MotorStorm Apocalypse, and I'll talk about that stuff a little bit more in a minute. Let's go ahead and jump into the game. I also have, I'm going to give the newer controller I bought a second chance, because the stick drift seemed to still be happening on the other controller and then fixed itself, so maybe it is fixed now. Also, I'm going to have to try to find a way to mute the music in this game, because otherwise that's not going to be good. Look, 2009, that was 3 years after the PlayStation 3 came out. Interesting note, that MotorStorm, the first and second MotorStorm game, they did not have... There we go. They did not have a option to choose your racer, if I remember right, and then MotorStorm Apocalypse, you played as specific characters. So this might be the only MotorStorm game where you actually get to pick your, like, how your character looks. One of the things I really like about MotorStorm Arctic Edge is that there are massive vehicles in this game. Especially because, like, the snow and everything, some of the vehicles you unlock in this game are huge, because they're almost like the type of thing you would see on a ski slope, which is awesome. Oh no, controller's having an oopsie again. Alright, now that we're in the actual game, let me talk about this game a little bit, because MotorStorm Arctic Edge is really, really interesting. So, MotorStorm as a series already is a pretty unique racing game. The way that the mechanics of it work are pretty cool, like the whole thing. So, Boost in MotorStorm is almost like the inverse of how Boost works in a lot of other games. Rather than having it where your boost has a limited amount, you have unlimited boost, but if you boost too much, you will heat up and explode. So that's how the boost works, which is pretty cool. The game also is not explicitly like a destruction derby game, but you can smash into other players, and vehicles have degradation and everything like that, and they get destroyed the more you hit stuff. I actually showed that in one of the shorts I made for Racing Games Almost Daily. If you guys check out the Racing Games Almost Daily archive, I showed how MotorStorm, which came out in 2006, had like really good graphics. But anyway, so this game does play like a MotorStorm game, but it's just interesting because there were two whole games before this that came out on a newer console than the PlayStation 2, because MotorStorm 1 and 2, and MotorStorm Pacific Rift, both those came out on PlayStation 3. And then also the follow-up to this game, MotorStorm Apocalypse, also came out on PlayStation 3. There's only been 4 MotorStorm games, unfortunately. There's not been another one. Although I've heard that that some of the developers on Dirt 5 also worked on MotorStorm, and that it's like similar to MotorStorm. I have played Dirt 5, and it does feel kind of like MotorStorm, but Dirt is a little bit of a more like professional series, whereas MotorStorm is supposed to be kind of like punk. So it's less serious with like smashing into people, or like if you're on a motorcycle or an ATV, you can like slap other riders off their vehicles or like flip them off and stuff. But yeah, so this game also, I have a little bit of a theory about this game. So when this game came out, it was not only released for PlayStation 2, but also for PSP. And I kind of wonder if it might have been originally that they were just aiming to make a MotorStorm game for PSP, and then in the process just decided to also port it to PlayStation 2. Because I don't know how true it is, but I've heard before that developing stuff for the PSP and the PS2 was like kind of similar, so I guess it's not that hard to port stuff between those two. But I think that might have been part of it, because the PSP had, like, a lot of people bought the PSP, and then the PS2 especially, though, like, almost everybody on Earth has probably played a PS2 at some point, because it's still the best-selling game console ever, so far as I know. But yeah, and the thing is, even though this game was exclusive to an older console, it actually did add new stuff to the franchise a little bit. So this is the only MotorStorm game with like snowy levels so far as I remember. Some of the other ones might have had some snow in them, but this is the only MotorStorm game focused on being in a cold, snowy environment, which I think is really interesting and really cool. And and like personally, I like that a little bit, because even though I actually hate cold weather and snow in real life, I grew up in a handful of places that had a lot of cold weather and snow, so it's a little bit of nostalgia there, even though in real life I do not like being in snow or cold weather. But yeah, and I mean it feels like a MotorStorm game. It's like, you can tell that it's a PS2 game, you know, not a PS3 game, but it feels very similar to MotorStorm, where like Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts felt kind of a lot different than Call of Duty World at War, because it was, I mean, it sort of needed to be. There was a lot of stuff in World at War that wouldn't necessarily be possible on PS2, because, you know, it just was different hardware. A racing game is a racing game, you know, even as much as graphics might improve and memory might improve and you might be able to have bigger tracks and more detailed vehicles and stuff, the base of a racing game is usually going to be like the same. But like, in that kind of works to the advantage of MotorStorm Arctic Edge, in that this still feels a lot like any other MotorStorm game. It's just that the graphics are a little worse. And honestly, even still, the graphics don't really look that bad for a PS2 game, I don't think. Although there is a lot less color in this game compared to other MotorStorm games, which I kind of think that may be part of why they set this game in like a snowy area as well. Because like with a snowy area, you're not going to have as many like fancy colors or anything, although there are some really cool reflections in the ice. But you know, in Pacific Rift, there was a lot of like Pacific, like colorful rainforest type things going on, whereas in this game it's a lot of, you know, snow and ice and mountains, and it's just a lot of white all over the place. Is there an avalanche happening? There might be an avalanche happening too. Also, another small feature that was added to this game, but something that's worth mentioning, is that in MotorStorm, like the other MotorStorm games, if you drive through water, it will cool your boost meter off. In this game, if you drive through water, if there is water in this game, it'll cool your boost meter off, but so will deep snow, which is kind of cool. Literally, I guess. This is another game, though, that someday I think it would be cool to go and do a playthrough of. Actually, well, I've done a playthrough of MotorStorm Apocalypse, but not MotorStorm 1 or 2 or this game, but it would be cool maybe someday to go back through and play through those 3 games as well. I think MotorStorm 1 and 2 actually get kind of challenging later on, though, so that's why I didn't record playthroughs of those. And also, they don't really have like a story like MotorStorm Apocalypse does. Oh, and I also wanted to note that the controls of this game are kind of unique for a racing game on PS2. So a lot of racing games on PS2, it was the cross button and the square button to use gas pedal and brake, but this one actually uses the controls that came into play more so on PS3, where it was R2 and L2 to gas and brake, which works pretty well, even though the PS2 doesn't have like triggers like the PlayStation 3 or newer consoles do. It still works well with the buttons that are on the PS2 controller, and it feels familiar. Similar to with what I said about World at War Final Fronts also, something that the Elgato is doing seems to be making this look better on my recording than it actually does on my screen. Although this one doesn't look bad for a PS2 game at all, I don't think. I mean, it's PS2, so it doesn't look great, it's kind of grainy and everything, but it looks alright. But when I look at my recording, it looks even better on my recording somehow. And this game also seems to have better support than some games for like 16:9 aspect ratio, because nothing really looks stretched. Some games, even if they have like a proper 16:9 aspect ratio built in and stuff, they end up looking stretched out. This one looks right. It also has a really good soundtrack too. Should mention that, because even though it's kind of a spin-off game, it still has like a licensed soundtrack and everything with a bunch of cool songs. But anyway, that's pretty much it for MotorStorm Arctic Edge. I really, really enjoy this game, by the way. Like, sometimes when you get games like this that were either, like, World at War Final Fronts, where it was made probably just kind of as, like, a side project to, you know, make money on the PlayStation 2 install base and stuff, and, like, when you have other games that, you know, it's the same game that came out on PS3 or whatever, but it just, like, looks worse on PS2 or whatever. This game actually is genuinely fun. Like, I really like MotorStorm Arctic Edge, and it's one that I would say if you like MotorStorm or you like racing games, you should check out, because it actually is really fun for what it is. But anyway, that's all there is to say about this one. So this is the last thing that I wanted to mention in this video, which is Postal 2 Paradise Lost, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing this because, for one, Postal 2, like, hyper-violent game, and also this is not really, like, a backwards leap in video game generation, because this is a PC game, so there's not really like generations. But apparently my save file for this still exists, or actually multiple of my save files of this still exist, so Postal 2 is a really interesting game. Like, I know that there's sort of, you know, problematic elements of it and everything, but like technologically I find this game really fascinating, and culturally. But anyway, congratulations on beating the game. The enhanced game is now available. Mode has more power-ups, several enhanced weapons, and some useful inventory items right to the start. So I'll just, oh, okay, I can jump to, well, it's a Wednesday in real life today, I think, because I just kind of want to wander around a little bit and show you guys this, assuming that it doesn't crash this time. Yep, okay, I know. I've got a whole day of things to do. So the interesting thing about this, just to kind of mention it, is that, oh, and I'm stuck in a junkyard. So the interesting thing about Postal 2 is that there was a Postal 3 that came out, and there's a whole handful of controversy with Postal 3, where it was like developed by a different developer, and fun fact, I actually talked to Mike J from Running with Scissors about this when I was in college, because I had a radio show in college I actually interviewed him for. So he told me on the radio that like, apparently Running with Scissors wrote the story for Postal 3, but then the developers were a different developer, and that's how it got all messy, and that pretty much the story of it is actually kind of funny in like Postal terms, but that oh, a cat. Oh, and I'm being shot by a man from a chicken restaurant. The story of Postal 3 is actually like kind of pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, so there was a whole different game that came out like before this, and then you know, then they went back to Postal 2, and they made this DLC sort of as a fundraiser for Postal 4, which is out now. And yeah, that's pretty much the story behind this. And, you know, I've got to say, Postal 2 is one of those games that, like, It has that interesting graphic style where it's older, so it's like lower polygon, but there's also a lot of really like nice textures that hold up at higher resolutions. I really like it. Like, this is one of my favorite art styles, even though I don't know if a lot of games really consider it like an art style, but where like you have like low polygon, but like the texture resolution is pretty high and it looks just kind of cool. There's a lot of like source engine stuff that kind of looks like that. But anyway, I think that kind of is enough for this portion of the video. So because I don't want to spend too much time on Postal 2. I always feel weird talking about games like Postal 2 on my channel because I also cover things like Club Penguin and stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that this is an interesting one, and it's another situation where, you know, they would have gone back to like an old engine to make this, especially because this game, I mean, this DLC came out in 2015 or 2013, sometime around then, like a long time after Postal 2 itself came out. And I actually remember when they were first starting talking about working on this, how they were like looking for developers for like an old version of I think this is Unreal Engine, and like they were looking for people who had like modded Postal 2 and stuff like that. So anyway, though, yeah, that's just honorable mention of this video is Postal 2 Paradise Lost.
And that's pretty much everything. I'm recording this outro because I realized that I never recorded a proper outro for this video. This video is taking quite a while to make. It wasn't that it actually took a long time to put together, but it was just spread out over a long period of time. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and if you have any suggestions for similar games like this, games that were part of a series that had stuff come out on newer consoles, but then for some reason released a game on an older console, make sure to let me know in the comments, because I think this is really interesting, and if there are more games like this, I would maybe make a second video on it. By the way, also I wanted to mention, so if you're wondering why the MotorStorm Arctic Edge gameplay that's in the background of the intro and the outro of this video looks significantly better than the gameplay that I used for the actual part where I talked about Arctic Edge, is because the gameplay that I used for this intro and outro I actually played on an emulator. In the sections where I actually talked about the games, I played them on actual hardware because I wanted to experience them the way that they're kind of meant to be experienced. But I decided to do the intro and outro gameplay on an emulator just mainly so that way it would look a little bit different, so that's why. But anyway, thank you guys for watching the video. I will see you in other stuff in the future, and bye-bye.